everyone, this is Mrs. Tevis-Finn recording from room 114. This is the European Theater, Part 1, setting the stage for D-Day. So I would like to recap before this presentation, we looked at the Allied invasion of North Africa. So that was in the end of 1942, and it showed how a large-scale invasion from the sea was possible. It also showed how we were able to coordinate with the British. It also convinced Roosevelt to meet with Churchill to plan the next stage of the war. So they headed to Casablanca in Morocco. Again, as a recap, you guys should know that the success in North Africa was known as Operation Torch. The key points was that we kept the Germans away from our supply lines in both the Suez Canal and especially protected our oil. So though we had some success in North Africa, you guys can look at this map. The red is the areas of Axis expansion. Obviously Switzerland is neutral, but just it kind of gives you a sense of what Churchill and FDR are up against. So here are their plans. So pictured here in Morocco is the Casablanca conference I want you to know about. So seated there would be President Roosevelt on the left and Winston Churchill on the right. So their main goal was to step up the bombing of Germany. They wanted, quote, the progressive destruction of the German military, industrial, and economic system and the undermining of the morale of the German people. Very lofty goals, and you guys should know that it's pretty difficult to undermine the morale and the economy, but they do have some success against the German military. You guys should know some backstory before the Casablanca conference that the Allies had been bombing Germany, especially Britain's Royal Air Force had dropped an average of 2,300 tons of explosives on Germany every month for more than 3 years. I mean, that is unrelenting. Even our 8th Army Air Force had dropped an additional 1,500 tons in the last 6 months of 1942. So these numbers are small, but I want you guys to note here, please write down that they increase it now, right? So between January 1943 and May of 1945, the Royal Air Force and the U.S. 8th Army Air Force dropped approximately 53,000 tons of explosives on Germany every month. I have pictured here just some of the devastation that many people even today say is unjustified, for many innocent German civilians were killed during these bombing campaigns. It also sets the stage for D-Day because their aircraft factories were destroyed. So we knew when we finally landed in France that our troops would not be bombed. But you guys should know that even though the economy and the morale stay strong, the German railroad and oil shortage are significantly cut. So there is some Allied victory here after the Casablanca conference. Something else that Churchill and FDR spoke about at the Casablanca was Italy. The Allies agreed to attack the Axis powers on the island of Sicily first. You guys should know Churchill called Italy the soft underbelly of Europe. He was convinced that the Italians would quit the war if the Allies invaded their homeland. Pictured here is the amphibious attack. So the invasion began in July of 1943. And there was bad weather, but the Allied troops made it ashore, and there are new amphibious trucks that deliver supplies to the soldiers on the beach. Only 8 days after they came ashore, what happened is General Patton and the British were able to surround the Germans on either side of the island and cause a surrender. This map just summarizes some of what I just spoke about in Sicily, but it did create a crisis in Italy. So the King of Italy, Victor Emmanuel, and a group of Italian generals decided it was time to depose Mussolini. So guys, that's summer of 1943. He actually told them that he was the most hated man in Italy. So he was arrested, Mussolini that is, and a new Italian government began to negotiate a surrender to the Allies. And so while Italy surrenders, Germany holds out. And so they seized control of northern Italy, including Rome, and they even returned Mussolini to power. I wanted to show you some of the terrain that the Germans were able to hold on to. So that's Cassino. It was very difficult for us to attack. So until January of 1944, we finally decided to go behind German lines at Anzio. I'll show you that in the map. And the Germans surrounded us. Okay, so you can check out the map here of Anzio, another amphibious landing, and the location of Rome. But Germany lacked air support, as I said earlier, because of all the bombing. And it took us almost 5 months, guys, to break through the German lines at Cassino. Remember, that looks very difficult to defeat. And also at Anzio, and then finally on to Rome. 2 days later, you guys should know, for the setup is D-Day. And you guys should also know, many people don't, that the Italian campaign was one of the bloodiest. 300,000 Allied casualties. And so the time of Mussolini is over. His mistress and him are shot and hung, pictured there on the right. It's a famous photograph, April 28th of 1945. His last words are there. So this is pretty graphic, and it just certainly shows the end of this era. And this will be our last few slides leading up to D-Day. I want you guys to know the backstory. So this Tehran conference is key. It's November 28th. Check out the year, 1943, located in Iran. And they reached several agreements. So Stalin promises to launch a full-scale offensive against the Germans when the Allies invade France. So that certainly gives us motivation to get our invasion underway. So that would help us. Roosevelt and Stalin agreed to divide Germany after the war so that it would never again threaten world peace. Please make note of that, for that will have a huge impact on our Cold War. Stalin promises that once Germany is defeated, that the Soviet Union is going to help the United States against Japan. So it really motivates us to try to defeat Germany because we need help against Japan. We also plan on an international peacekeeping organization after the war. So please remember, the League of Nations failed after Woodrow Wilson and his Senate couldn't agree, and so there is no United Nations at this point, guys. No plan to try to prevent another world war in place at this point. And I will leave you with this slide. I want you to know what Operation Overlord means. So after that conference in Tehran, Roosevelt heads to Cairo, Egypt, where he and Churchill continue planning the invasion of France. One major decision still had to be made, and the president had to choose the commander for Operation Overlord, which is the code name for the invasion of Nazi-occupied France. So many of you guys probably know, but I want you to figure out which of these people are chosen to plan, and our next presentation will be D-Day. This is Tevi signing off.